Greetings everyone. Today we have a specialty video. This is the sales contract for a business purchase, and it's known as the business purchase and sale contract. This is a contract, it's a specialty contract that this particular contract, you're not going to find it that easily, but there's ways to get it, and it's for a sale of a business, not necessarily like a piece of real estate like a vacant lot. It's particularly used when you're going to be selling the actual business, whether it be a retail business, a restaurant business. You could use this particular contract. I do recommend I'll show you how to fill in the blanks for this specific contract if you're going to be using this particular document. But it's highly recommended, even if you do fill in the blanks for this contract, that you should seek the advice of definitely like an attorney, an accountant, tax professionals when doing the sale and purchase of a business, especially if it's a big business, even if it's a small business. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and this contract can be used and be applied, but I highly recommend that even as a real estate broker, you want to get some additional specialists and individuals involved, such as an attorney and an accountant, CPA, to just make sure things go smoothly with the transfer of business from one entity to another, a new owner. So before we start getting into this video, our company is Nizz Realty Inc. We're licensed in the state of Florida at the time of making this video. We pay all of our agents 100% of their real estate commission. How does that work, and where can more information be found is on our website, nizzrealty.com, or in the description at the bottom of this video. But enough about that. You're probably here to see how this contract is drafted and to learn more about it. So let's get right into the video. I've actually never used this particular contract and drafted it before, so I'm going to go along for the first time and just use my best knowledge with going through it. I've usually used the services of an attorney to draft up a separate contract to do sale of a business, and I highly recommend that you do that as well if you're going to be participating in the sale of a business. But this contract does exist. You can use it. Maybe I'll use it one day, but we're going to go through it line by line. I've never really looked at it in full detail. I've browsed through it, and I'm just going to fill it out to the best of my knowledge. So we're in for a treat with this video. Let's see how I do. So one thing to note up here is the effective date. You'll put the date here once everyone executes the contract. So on the day the last person executes the contract, you put the date up here. That's one thing to note. It's up here in the upper right corner. Now, the first things you fill out is the seller. Let's say it's usually going to be a company name, but I'm just going to use placeholders. So let's just say Billy Bob LLC. For the company name, you put their telephone number here, whatever it is, with offices at, whatever their office location is. Maybe their main headquarters, you put their full property address here. Make sure you put the full property address here. So let's just put a placeholder for right now. The buyer, you put wherever the buyer's name is, the company name of the buyer. Let's say it's John Doe, PA. You could also put, this is something that can be done, but you could also put like and or assignees, something along those lines. So you could do that if they're, because you could put in the buyer's name. Let's say John Doe is going to purchase the property as the buyer, but John Doe wants to start up a new company name to put the business in. So you could put and or assignees, because John Doe may assign that property to one of a new company that they create for liability reasons or for whatever business reasons they have. So you could do something like that. That's just something to note, the and or assignees. As I go through this contract, there may be a section for that to assign the contract, but that's just one note to put there. For now, let's just put John Doe, let's say PA, and I'll go from there. Same thing here, telephone number, and you could put the address if they have any offices down here. I'm just going to copy and paste here. Maybe we'll change the street name. The next paragraph here is hereby agree that seller shall sell and buyer shall buy upon the terms and conditions hereinafter set forth the business known as, and you put the business name here. A lot of times businesses have a DBA, doing business as. I'd recommend look, especially if you're in the state of Florida, you could look it up in the Division of Corporations. I would put the company name, their actual legal company name, and then if they have a DBA, then I put that there. So their legal company name could be, let's say, I don't know, it's Billy Bob LLC in this case. But let's say they're doing business as, you could write, maybe in parentheses, DBA, uh, maybe whatever the business will be. Let's say it's Billy's Tools. So that's their DBA. The DBA could be almost any other name. It's just the doing business as name. So let's say the actual company name is Billy Bob LLC, but their DBA is Billy's Tools. Let's say it's a tool retail business or something like that, where they sell different types of gardening tools or home appliance tools, whatever it may be. So you could write it like that if they have a DBA. The next paragraph is together with the assets of the business entity, including all furniture, fixtures, equipment, inventory, accounts, if applicable, goodwill, assets, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to read through this. Set forth in Exhibit A, located at, okay, so you could create a separate exhibit and you could list all those things. Let's say, you could put the property address wherever the business is here. Let's say it's, what the office address is up here, and then set forth in Exhibit A. You'd create a separate exhibit and you'd itemize all these things, all the furniture, the fixtures, the equipment, the inventory, all these things that's listed here. You create in a separate exhibit. That'd probably get really long, especially if it's a big business. But that's what this particular fill in the blank is talking about, creating a separate exhibit, which is a separate document, to itemize and list all these things discussed in this small paragraph. Purchase price. You put the purchase price here of how much the business is being sold and bought for. Let's say today it's being sold for $1 million. Let's just say. There we go, $1 million. Deposit to be held in escrow by. You could put the title company here, the attorney, or the real estate broker that's holding the escrow deposit. Let's just say for the purpose of this video, our company is holding the escrow deposit. So we'll just put our brokerage name there, but it could be a title company, it could be a attorney, somebody who's holding the escrow. You put the company name there. And then the amount. Let's say there's a $10,000 deposit. Simple enough. Section B here is an additional deposits due within blank banking days after effective date. If there's going to be an additional deposit, let's say after, I don't know, whatever, you could put as many days as you want here, but let's say 15 days after 15 business days or banking days as it states here, there's an additional $10,000 deposit. It could be whatever the amount is agreed upon between the parties. So you write the number there. So after the 15 days, there's an additional deposit being put in. Section C is purchase money note and mortgage to the seller and the principal amount. I'm not going to get too into this. This starts dealing with if the seller is going to be, dealing with holding a note and mortgages. I highly recommend, like I said in the beginning of this video, if you're going to be going this route, you're probably going to want to get a mortgage loan officer, an MLO, someone a part of the NMLS to get involved here, or some type of specialist, maybe an attorney and a mortgage loan officer to help you with drafting this part and going through it. As a real estate broker, I'm not going to get too into detail here. It's just for me to have general knowledge of this and point the individuals in the right direction of the professional they should seek to have this drafted up properly. So my recommendation, get an attorney and a mortgage loan officer involved for something like this, somebody that specializes in this type of business and transaction. And then same thing with Part D, condition talks more about mortgages, fixed rate, adjustable, balloon mortgage. A lot of times with commercial and businesses, there could be a balloon mortgage with a balloon payment. I'm not going to get too into that. The video will be extremely long. If you want to get further details of that, we could discuss it in a later video, but that's something to seek a mortgage loan officer about than an attorney. Or Section E, other financing, again, discuss with an attorney or a loan officer. So I'm not going to really go over that. Then the balance due and the total purchase price. The program I'm using here does the calculations for us. So this is the amount. If there's a deposit of $20,000 over a period of time, the amount due to close is $980,000. So we'll leave it at that. Time for acceptance. If this contract is not executed by seller and buyer on or before, and you put a date there, I'd recommend filling this part out. You don't want to leave this blank so that everyone, there's a time for this to be executed. So let's say Today's the 11th that I'm making this video. Say it needs to be executed by the 20th of September 2024. That means that if the seller signs, or if the buyer signs this contract, but the seller signs on the 21st, it's the time of acceptance has passed. The contract shall be null and void if it's not returned to them by the 20th. So you put a date there so that the contract expires by a certain date. Time is of the essence. Everyone needs to execute the contract by this specific date. Simple enough. Closing date, another simple thing, whatever the closing date is. Let's say it's going to be October 31st, but you put whatever time that's needed there. Could be in a couple of months, could be in a few months. That's something that's contingent and will change over time. The rest of these paragraphs is nothing to fill in. You could read through it if you like, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to start going through the different parts of this video that you need to fill in. Inspections, you could start here at B, at buyer's option within blank days from effective date, 5 if not filled in. You'd fill out the amount of time that would be phase 1 of the inspection. I'm not going to read through this entire paragraph, but basically that you need to put a date here at when phase 1 of the inspection will begin. It says here, like a licensed environmental engineer, buyer shall forth deliver to seller a copy of all resulting environmental reports. So this just discusses the inspection periods. So you can put whatever date you want there. You could leave it blank for 5. As I always say in my videos, I don't like to leave anything blank. I like to put an amount there. So let's just say we're going to put 15 days, but that's completely negotiable between the parties. Buyer shall deliver written notice of the requirement to the seller, and seller may elect within X blank days of receipt of the notice to conduct the investigation at seller's expense. Again, this is if anything comes up through the buyer's inspection. If there's any problems, you put here how many days the seller has. You could leave it blank, or you could fill it in. Let's just say 10 days. I'm just throwing numbers out here. Really, you could put whatever you want here for the amount of time that everyone has to respond. This third one here, seller shall have 90 days after notice to complete cleanup. If problem is not resolved by that time, either party may agree to extend for an additional length of time, or contract may be terminated. So this particular paragraph is basically discussing, after briefly looking over it, the buyers have an amount of time to do an inspection from their professionals, an environmental engineer, to see if there's any problems. The next fill in the blank is the seller has a certain amount of days to respond and review everything. And then the third part here is the seller has amount of time to resolve and clean up the problem. You could put 90 days here, you could put 180 days here, and then you could extend it or cancel the contract after that. So it really just depends. Let's just put 90 days here, and then we'll just leave it at that. The next part here, seller shall, within blank days from effective date, make available to buyer a statement of income and expenses pertaining to the subject property. Okay, so this is important. Either the seller shall or shall not. So basically they are or they're not going to provide bank statements and the income of the business. They could not provide it. I've never personally heard of a business being sold without someone scrutinizing and reviewing the income. So usually you'll check shall, and then within a certain amount of days, let's say 5 days, to provide the income and expense, the books basically, to see what the income and the expenses, what's going in and what's coming out of the business as far as the money is concerned, pertaining to the subject property for a period from, and you could put the dates here. At the time of making this video, it's 2024. So let's say you want to review the financials from the first up until today's date, which is the 11th at the time of making this video. So you could put that there, but you could put whatever dates you want there. It could be for the last 2-3 years. You just put those dates there for when you want to see the financials. The next part down here, buyer shall be allowed blank days after receipt of said records to provide written notice to seller and broker of disapproval. So basically the buyer is going to allow themselves, let's say 5 days, to review all the documents, the profit and losses, and make a decision if everything looks good or if it's not acceptable and they want to back out of the contract, or they want to be provided additional documentation. So that's what that paragraph is discussing. Part D, Seller shall, within 5 days of the effect date, make available to buyer for inspection, review, management, and service contracts and other agreements pertaining to the operation of business property. So again, this is for the seller to allow the buyer to inspect and review service contracts, other agreements pertaining to the operation of business. I'd recommend the buyer being able to have access to this and look over it, but if not, you check the other box. So you could read through this paragraph and you come down here, buyer shall be allowed after receipt to notify seller and broker writing of disapproval. Again, you could just fill this out after the buyer's reviewed everything. The buyer has a certain amount of time to let them know if the buyer disapproves. So that's what that paragraph is discussing. It's just additional inspections to keep it simple. And you could read through the paragraph on what the additional inspections to the business is. Maybe the business has independent contractors, different management employees, or anything else pertaining to the operation of the business that the buyer wants to inspect, and then have time to approve or disapprove. And then section E here, seller shall deliver to buyer, effective date, copies of all licenses and permits pertaining to the operation of business. Okay, so if the business is required to have certain licenses, maybe certain food licenses, maybe it's a restaurant business, they have a license to sell alcohol or beer and wine. That's what this would be for. They have to furnish and provide all of those licenses and permits. And again, you fill in the blanks for the amount of days, 5 days, 30 days for the buyer to review everything. So you just fill in the blanks there. Simple enough. This whole paragraph 7 is discussing about inspections and basically the buyer being allowed time to look over the books, look over the profit and loss, look over all the management and the day-to-day operations of the business, basically inspect every detail of the business to make sure everything is in compliance and everything is shown about the business, so everything makes sense for the buyer. Or if there's something that comes up that does not look good or the buyer disapproves of, they could have some time to reply back and say that there's an issue here. These paragraphs, there's nothing to fill in, so you could read through them. There's something to fill in here. Let me read through it. For closing, it is agreed that seller's accounts receivable are included in the purchase price. Okay, so if this is discussing the accounts receivable or included in the purchase price, I'm not going to get too involved into this. You could look through this particular paragraph and read it. If you're a member of our brokerage and you're filling this out, you can contact me for further information, but I'm not going to really go over this. This is something that, once again, you'll probably have an attorney or an accountant to assist with this in the sales price. So I'm just going to skip over that. This particular part J, it is agreed that the on-hand inventory at closing of marketable goods at seller's cost shall be blank. An itemized physical count of these goods held for resale shall be taken. Okay, this is another thing that's a little outside of scope of practice of a real estate broker. I would recommend consulting a professional, or if this pertains to the sale, or you're dealing with on-hand inventory at closing, effective date of closing, and all rights in the trade name. So you can put the trade name here of the business. I'm not going to get too into these particular paragraphs because it really pertains to the type of business that's being sold, and I'd have to read through it, and it would probably take me a little while to really start explaining. This is a little bit outside of scope of practice of a real estate broker, so I'm not going to get too into it. I probably could explain it a little bit and give a general idea, but if you're trying to fill this out, you could reach out for further information. Pre-closing obligations, seller and or buyer, let's say, agrees to spend at no cost to buyer a period of during normal business hours to assist buyer and employees in the orderly transfer of the business. Okay, so this filling this out is just either the seller or the seller can designate somebody to assist within a certain amount of time the transfer of the business. I guess handing over the operations to the buyer and I guess assisting the buyer a little bit with how to run the day-to-day operations or take care of the business. I'm not going to get too into detail of that, but just as a brief explanation, that's what this paragraph is talking about. It's talking about the seller and or the seller's assignee or somebody working with the seller is going to give a specific amount of time to assist the buyer with normal business operations and hours. Again, fill in the blanks here. Not to complete the seller. I'm just going to read through this real quick. Okay, so I'm not going to get too into this paragraph, but I'm just going to briefly discuss it. It's basically that the seller is not going to open up a similar business within a certain amount of miles. You could put whatever here, 5 miles, 10 miles, to compete with the business that's being sold. So let's say, what did we say? This was like Billy's Tools, tools selling, like a business that sells like say power tools or gardening tools. At the sale of this business, the seller's not going to go the next day, within a 5 or 10 mile radius and open up another tool store and start competing with this particular business. That's what this paragraph is discussing. I'm not going to go too much further into it, but that's the general idea of this paragraph, is to not compete once sold. Miscellaneous. I'm not going to go into this particular paragraph too much. It starts discussing about that the closing agent shall retain a certain amount of money from the seller's closing proceeds for a period of a certain amount of days to secure sellers uh, indemnification responsibility as provided herein. I'm not going to go too into detail about this, but basically it's the closing agent, let's say the title company or attorney, holding on to a specific amount of money for a specific amount of time, so that everything settles with the transfer of the business and everything goes smoothly after the sale. Again, that's something that I really speak to an attorney and other professionals about concerning the details of something like that. But that's just the general idea of what this paragraph is discussing. Let's see down here, part J, buyer shall, within blank days. Okay, so this is just more basically inspections and doing due diligence, inquiries, investigations, studies of other means regarding the property, including laws, zoning, or so. This is another good thing to fill out. It deals with a little bit more with inspections. Buyer shall have whatever the amount of days, 10 days, 5 days, whatever you put there, for the buyer to do the due diligence discussed in this paragraph, such as laws, zoning, and everything else that's discussed here. It's just an additional due diligence for other important things. Let's go through this. There's a paragraph for special clauses here at the end. Paragraph 17, broker's compensation. This is an important one. If a written listing contract is currently in effect, seller agrees to pay the brokers named below a professional service fee according to the terms of the listing contract. If no written listing contract is currently in effect, seller shall pay the brokers named below a professional service fee of blank of the purchase price or flat fee at the time of closing. Okay, so this is the broker compensation. If you're a realtor or a real estate broker, a real estate agent, and you're drafting this and you're going to be compensated for doing this, this is the particular paragraph to fill out. If there's a listing contract, you click the top box here, and the compensation will be discussed in the listing contract. If not, you click this box and you discuss the fee here. Let's say it's 2% of the purchase price, or it could be a flat fee. Let's say you're doing this all for, I don't know, a $50,000 flat fee amount. You put that there. So let's just say we're doing it for 2% of the purchase price. You put that there, and then the buyer would sign and date here, fill out their information, the seller as well, and the firm name of the cooperating or the listing broker. So if you're the listing broker of the business being sold, you put the company name here, and if you're the agent, you put the agent's name here. You can put their license number. Same thing with the buyer's broker, company name here, and the agent's name here. And that's pretty much it for this particular contract. Again, I'd recommend, you could use this contract, but I highly recommend that you use and consult the services of a professional and the professionals for the business being sold. Some of the main ones you definitely want is an attorney that specializes in business sales. I'd recommend getting an accountant, preferably a CPA, to deal with the financials. And then if you're dealing with any type of mortgages or seller financing or anything like that, you're going to want some type of loan officer, an MLO possibly. An attorney can assist with that, but you may even want to retain the services of a financing specialist. And then depending on the nature of the business, you're going to want professionals for that as well. It could be anything. You might need to hire engineers, architects, environmentalists. There's a list of endless list of professionals you could hire depending on the nature of the business. And you're going to want to get those professionals involved depending on the type of business that's being sold. This particular video is just to show you how to fill this out and discuss some general things. When there's a sale of a business, you can use this form, but again, I'd recommend having an attorney draft up a separate contract and have professionals that specialize in business-to-business sales to assist with the contract here. I hope this video was helpful. If you're doing the sale of a business, our brokerage can assist you with that if you're, need assistance with it. So, if anything, feel free to contact us for a free confidential consultation. Other than that, I hope this video was helpful. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.